Good morning. You can hear me, I'm hoping? It looks like you can. Yeah. Hey, it's nice to be here. It is delightful to be here with you guys. Um, I, uh, I'm going to start with something. I got a couple of things. A little bit of housekeeping or whatever you call it. We will meet here tomorrow um, at 11 o'clock California time, and there is a time change tonight. So we're meeting here. We're meeting at that address for a live interaction where you don't get relegated to the comments section, but can actually interact and interrupt and voice your opinion or just listen, whatever, like you do. Strictly optional, it's just nice to be with y'all. Hey, good to have you here, Rob. So I'm going to start with something that I think is a useful way to frame up how I look at the world because it points in opposite directions, right? The theme this week is how change changes. Um, and I'm gonna describe something that is very familiar to all of us, and then I'm gonna tie it back to that how change changes all the way back to physics, and then I'm gonna tie it forward all the way to the touchy 2020s and the Trump train. There's a lot of T's. I tend to do a lot of alliteration. My mind just works that way. Some people have said I'm too clever by half in my execution of language, but I do love playing with it. It's a delight, and it's some of the irony that I love playing with. I have had this metaphor in mind for a while. I've been using it a lot. There's videos about it for what it's like to be alive. Um, you're driving down a winding road in the dark, and it's crowded and you're trying to get someplace. You're on the road, but there are forks in the road as well, and it's dark, so you can't actually see that far ahead. So you can only imagine, and it's dangerous because it's a winding road, and you have to watch out for perils on opposite sides. That is, you can get too far over to the left or too far over to the right, and in the meantime, you've got two backseat drivers behind you, nagging at you to watch out for the errors on their side, the risks on their side only. And that has been my metaphor all the way down to what starts with life, which is perhaps the biggest, I would say it's the biggest change in how things change. So that's my metaphor. And one of the reasons I like it is that it plays with constraints, which we tend to overlook. Um, I can think of my goal as a point somewhere out there that I'm going to, but it's actually, I'm kind of constraining myself towards it. And I'm doing it on a road, which to me is narrowing, not arrowing. That is, I'm on a narrowed road, but I can be anywhere within a safe space in the middle of that, of my lane anyway. And I have to watch out for dangers on either side. And the dangers are, they're like ironic situations. For example, imagine that I'm listening intently to one of the backseat drivers, let's say the one on my left side, and they're saying, "You got to watch out. You got to err way over on the right." Maybe because they're the loudest or more persuasive, or maybe because I was at risk of something on the left side, and therefore I'm going to overcompensate. I love this Persian statement. He who's burnt by hot milk blows on ice cream. That is, we often take oversteps in the right direction. Yeah, I have to watch out for the left side, but I also still have to watch out for the right side. And it's constraint based. I'm not I'm not a determinist vehicle. I'm not on autopilot, or I'm not on a train track. I love this limerick. There was a young man who said, "Damn, for it certainly seems that I am a creature that moves in immutable grooves. I'm not even a bus, I'm a tram." I don't believe it, but I find it just totally delightful. There's something about us that even envies being on a road, on an express train, on something that will arrow us to where we're going. But that's not what life is like. It's actually based on constraints. And that's really fundamental to understanding even the emergence of life. So I will get into that a little bit. But in the meantime, I also want to talk about another thing that is up. Let's see. Okay, good. I think I'm fine. I'll go the other direction first because that's where probably more of the easy resonance is. You got the Trump train. The Trump train barrels through and is paying no attention to what's going on the road. I mean, it's road rage. I think of the movement as the evidence, it just keeps on mounting that they don't give a rat's ass about anything they claim to care about so much that it trumps all other considerations. It's just a big hell no, fuck you kind of a movement. That's what I think is going on. I mean, just case after case. You look at the Republican support for bombing Iran goes way up as soon as he bombs Iran. This isn't a principled movement. Most movements that become trains are not. They're just barreling through saying, you guys got to get out of the way. Now, I just drove here from a walk with Terry, my research colleague, where we were talking about origins of life stuff related to this thing I mentioned last week about, you could say, a solar system-wide affordance that makes life likely in lots more places than we've assumed. I'll get to that in a bit. But the timing was a little tight. And anyway, I have a habit that's a little Trump train-ish. When I'm driving down the road, I indulge in some road rage, virtual road rage. That is, I will mutter, mumble, and even, I'll curse drivers who are going too slow. Usually it's going too slow because I'm a kind of speedy guy. And I don't mean it, but it feels good. I'm discharging. I'm doing what I call exercise or off jerking. I'm being a jerk, but I'm doing it within my compartmentalized container. And yeah, I can think of a couple of times in my life when that actually exploded outward. Parking spaces. There's been a couple of peculiar experiences in my life around parking spaces. I'll give you one just because it's a funny anecdote. My marriage was falling apart. My wife had gotten to the point where she had said, let's just not even talk all week long, except for our once a week visits with the marriage counselor. It was getting that bad. And I was driving my kid to a movie. We were a little late and it was raining and I saw a parking place and someone else saw it too, or I thought they did. And I snarled at them and I looked up and it was my marriage counselor who was out for the first time since having a baby. Wild. Anyway, but mostly, I think by now, I don't end up turning my exercise, my hell no, you shouldn't be going that slow kind of vibe in the car. I don't translate that. I don't believe it. I'm not in the right. It's a way for me to discharge. It's like watching a movie or masturbating. It's just a way to discharge the tensions that if you do take them seriously, if they do become self-convincing, are the Trump train. I don't think, like I said, I think that's road rage. So in that story, I've contained lots of different things. Just let's look at some of the things. First of all, this thing about narrowing, not arrowing. You came to this conversation, you had an intention, but the intention was actually a constraint on possibilities. Of all the things you could do, you're within a tolerant set. It's not like you show up at a set point in time, exactly one place, one time. There is a little bit of that on the web where you got to get the address right and all of that, and you got to be precise about that, which also relates. It's something I want to talk about because it's more arrowing than we are. And we make a mistake when we assume that everything is done that digitally. That is, you either arrived or not. But if you think about, I'll show up tomorrow. I have a jam session at 3:00. If I show up at 3:05 or 2 minutes before, if I park here instead of there, close enough is what we're talking about. So there's constraint of the kind that I just described. Constraint doesn't mean, so a wall is a physically imposed constraint. It's a static constraint. And with a wall, yeah, to some extent, it's a little bit more arrowing, which is that I've got to stay away from just bumping straight into it, especially with a nose like this. I mean, but beyond that, the kinds of constraints that interest me are actually closer to traffic congestion. And constraints are what we overlook most when we're trying to explain how change changes. So I'll get to that in just a second. Let me take a look at these messages. Is my video feed still here? Shit. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I look all animated here, but not on the screen. Okay, can you hear me? Yes, constraint meaning possibilities are pruned. I'm working on seeing if I can figure out any way to get the screen back, the video screen back. Sorry about this. Some people have said you don't actually need to have your mug on all the time. Why is this? I just I'm really sorry about this. Me and my technology. Hold on. But if this turns out to be audio, it turns out to be audio with my mug on. Let's see if I can get this thing started again. Just you can still hear me. Good. Okay, there's that. Let's see if this comes up. I just upgraded my connection between camera and otherwise. Let me see if this works. Sorry, guys. Oh, is this better? Am I working? Am I visually apparent? Someone tell me if you can still see and hear me. Yes, good. All right. All right. All right. Where the heck was I? Okay. So constraint is about possibilities pruned. This is the most overlooked thing, and it's fascinating why it's overlooked. So I'm going to go back down to the other side of it, the origins of life from physical chemistry, from nothing but physical chemistry. I don't get to imply anything else. I don't get to posit some unexplained explanation. That's fundamental to this work I do with Terrence Deacon. He's the one who really introduced me to this. So science is a pursuit of natural explanations for all natural phenomena. You don't get to do any supernatural moves. So you got this real question, which is, there seems to be change. Here's an example of the change. Me trying to get anywhere is that I conceive of, that is I can think about. Someone says, be at my house at this time and I'll show up. That wasn't a source of physical work 250, 300,000 years ago. There wasn't language. And so language is a new kind of work. And so is feeling. Feeling is also work. You feel a constraint. The most important early philosopher for me is this pragmatist, Charles Sanders Peirce, who says that if you didn't ever get any pushback from the world, you wouldn't have any reason to know you existed. So, and then before that, before feeling, there wasn't the struggle for existence. There wasn't anything trying to do anything, to Jeff's point. And Jeff always comes on saying trying because he gets it. Trying is a really interesting thing. What is trying and how did it start is probably the simplest way to talk about my work. From the origins of life straight through to the Trumpists. And from the origins of life, from what? From physical chemistry, actually classical. I'm not spending time in the quantum arena. I mean, I study a little bit on the side. I don't feel like I understand it, but I've been told that nobody does. But it's also a place where we get a kind of dualism that I'm trying to avoid. Remember, I said science is the pursuit of natural explanations for all natural phenomena. So I don't get to posit unexplained explanations as the explanations for what I'm trying to explain. And that takes work because intuitively we just do that all the time. We do it all the time. Well, it's what's called black boxing in engineering. You just assume there's a gizmo in there or something in there, a force or a substance or a non-thing thingy that does the explaining of what goes on with you. And you get this throughout the sciences. I mean, for example, if you ask a psychologist what a motivation is, they'll just tell you, well, if we see effort, if we see trying, we assume a motivation. So and then as Matthew points out here, by the way, delightful to have you here, Matthew. As Matthew points out here, it's a pseudo mechanism. Mostly what you get in the sciences is equivocation about whether we're talking about a mechanism or whether we're talking about like a machine or mechanics or physical pushes and pulls, billiard balls, or very oh no, please go ahead. Okay, good. No, how do you think I feel? Terry, the love of my life, who I've worked with now for 28 years and then some, is moving away in a couple of weeks. I mean, like a couple of weeks now. So this is one of the last walks I'll have with them out here. I might go make trips there, but having someone to talk to about this stuff is great. And I should also point out that there are people who have come through this channel and gotten interested enough in his work that they've joined our Friday meetings from 3 on, which tend to be kind of technical and scientific, but they are able to join and get right in on the conversation. So this is also, in a way, a feeder for that. If you're interested in these questions about what I'll call emergent constraints, um, uh, and how you would play them out continuously. So in our work together, we never get to smuggle in some unexplained explanation. I have to explain what I am in strictly physical terms. Okay, I would love to sit through technical meetings. Good, yes, excellent. Email me. This is my email address, and I'll get you involved. And also, yeah, this is always my email address, gmail.com. Okay. So you got these two main approaches that scientists take. And they're also, in a way, there's parallels between them and what the religious and spiritual do. Oh, there's a slash in there that doesn't belong. It's just Jeremy Sherman at gmail.com. So I got to explain how change changes. And the standard moves is to say it doesn't change. So the two moves that are most like this in the sciences, if we're trying to explain what is trying and how does it start, you say there are two moves. One is there is no trying. So this would be Robert Sapolsky. You say, no, it's all mechanism. Now he uses words like motivation. He implies that there's a different kind of cause. But he says that ultimately it all comes down to physical chemistry, and therefore there is no emergent property. There is no new kind of work. So they're stuck with a terrible paradox. I have a few of them. I mean, it's just delightful to see how their equivocation puts them in this tottering zone. So he's basically saying choose determinism. He's advocating that advocacy doesn't work because we are basically machines. He's also saying a weird thing, which is forgive people because they know not what they do because they're machines. Okay, well, I'm a fucking machine too, so you can tell me I have to forgive them? What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about this? You know, if I'm going to just tolerate everybody's behavior because it's unchangeable, you're asking me to change. So anyway, that's one move, which is to say on the question, what is trying and how does it start? You can say nothing tries, not even you. And the other complication is that these are people who are advocating no trying. They're trying to get you to believe that there's no trying. So that's the choose determinism. The other version of it's called panpsychism, which is everything's trying. You know, I have sophisticated, high level, well-read philosopher friends who basically say there's not really a difference between banging on a table and its responsiveness and punching me. Fat chance, but go ahead, knock yourself out. I should also point out that all of this work on figuring out what trying is and how does it start, you don't need to do it in order to try. You do not need to think about what you are in order to be you. This is a kind of hyperbolic introspection. Terry and I and a few other guys were out there talking the other day on our dog walk. And Terry said, yeah, my work was never focused on learning a specialization. My work has always been driven by questions. And we started to talk about what our questions were. And he listed his two as what is the nature of time and what is trying and how does it start? That is, when do you when you get this difference between things that try and things that don't? And I said mine was, what the actual fuck am I? That's why I do this work, but I can afford to do this work, and you don't need to do this work. I simply have the appetite, aptitude, and opportunity, and a lot of people don't have the opportunity. If your life is a white knuckle ride, it's really understandable why you wouldn't be interested in these questions. And those people who are interested in them are often intimidated by them a little bit. And I have to say, it's not hard. It's just unfamiliar. Down to the fuck. That's right. Terry's not a swear word guy, though he's loosening up. The other night, I think I mentioned this last time. The other night we were out at dinner and we got Chinese we had Chinese food and went to the fortune teller, the fortune cookies, and I said, "What does yours say?" And he said, "Suck it." And and he's winking at me in a way. It's just not his nature. The guy's a nerd. Anyway, so if you're interested in what the actual fuck you are, I had a thought this week. Most science is done in a very siloed way. And I actually think there's a problem with that. And it's not just that they don't know what each other is doing, it's that they don't know. There's a lot of room for equivocation when you do that. You're doing spotlight work. You focus on one little thing and you're not paying attention. I actually think you can't do science without the kind of science that interests me. This is not engineering. I would distinguish most of science I think of as engineering or reverse engineering. But this is a different kind. If you're going to explain what you are, then you actually need a worldview. You need a universe view. You need to be thinking coherently across the spectrum, not just locally coherently, where I could make a mathematical model for whatever. That's just a mathematical model. The math is not the territory. No, but so it's basically what I consider the joy of my life, and what I get here is folks sitting around speculating about the whole ball of wax and us in it. Yeah, I don't consider it interdisciplinary work, and I'll tell you why. Interdisciplinary work is easy if you don't have a worldview, if you're not trying to get a coherent worldview. I coined the term, Terry doesn't like it, but I still think it's useful. I'm sequidisciplinary. I'm paying attention to how change changes. And there are changes in the sequence of what there are. The changes are the sequences that are tracked by the different sciences. And they are cumulative. They are not, you move from one discipline to another one. You can do that work. That's like, it's actually called poetic naturalism as a celebration of it, and I don't buy it. I think it's the wrong way to go about it. It makes for a lot of equivocation of the kind you get from Sapolsky. So an example of that is Sapolsky is perfectly happy to say that a hormone triggers an appetite or a motivation. Okay, there's equivocation in that. Hormones are chemicals. By themselves, they're inert. That is, they depend on a whole context for triggering anything functional or motivated. But what's a motivation? Okay, it's kind of a mechanical model where you got this black box that you call motivation and something triggers it, but it's also a motivation. So I have to be really careful about that stuff. I have to be really careful about information as well. This is another dualist move. So the motivation move, just so I'm clear on this, I've told you this before. I got an opportunity to talk to the head of the science division for the American Psychology Association. He said he got into all this research to figure out whether we were determined, like Sapolsky says, or have free will. I think that's a false question. I think it's a very bad question. It doesn't pay attention to will, motivation, trying, effort. It just kind of either assumes or assumes away will. It doesn't get around to that. It either says there is no will and we're determined, or there is will and it's completely free, or something like, or it's capable of doing things without being responsive to its environment. I just don't think but so sequidisciplinary, what I mean by that is not that I have to move from one to the other as disciplines, but I have to recognize that reality has emergence in it. That's how change changes. So I'm going to come back around to that. Let me see if I missed something here. Obtuse, got to remember. Did I say that? Okay, let's see. Yeah, I love Sapolsky too. By the way, he was a notoriously terrible writer when he got to Harvard, where he knew Terry and some of my other buddies. But boy, did he get good at that. But I think of him as doing something that is the heart of poetic naturalism, and therefore I don't buy it. He's telling colorful stories about a colorless world. He's telling a dispassionate story about he's telling a passionate story about a dispassionate world. That's most of what you find out there in biophilosophy. Dan Dennett was a master. Richard Dawkins, masters of that stuff. And very enchanting. Makes every reader feel like a genius. So there's all of that. But I'm trying to do something different. And Terry's occasionally described it as trying to explain a joke. It's a little dry. compared to what they do. And yet I make it as colorful as possible. I mentioned to him and a couple of colleagues this morning on our walk that about content, I'm a total prude. That's why I'm fussy enough to say no, not cross-disciplinary, but sequidisciplinary, not multidisciplinary. Um, and it can be a little abrasive. But about delivery, I'm a total slut. I'll say it anyway. I don't care. I don't care. But I want the content to be as rigorous as possible. I just froze up again, didn't I? Shit, damn mofo GM. Let me see. I'm gonna have to figure out why this is. And in the meantime, I'm still talking. And in the meantime, I'll get it to come back up. Um, just think of this like a Ken Burns movie. That's what we got going on here. Because I've got the stills, but I've also got occasional animated me's. I'm seeing what I can do here and why it didn't work. I must have loaded the software wrong or something. It's going to come up in just a second. In the meantime, there we go. I'm back. Let me get back to constraint for a minute and talk about that as how change. Oh no, let me first say, okay. So on the question, what is trying and how does it start? How does it start? If you don't believe in emergence, you got a few possibilities. One is, well, since there's no new kinds of work in the world, then either there is no trying or everything is trying, because you have to explain everything from the ground up, and there's no changes in it. A block universe has this problem. Um, that is, even if you say, well, time is just a fourth dimension, and you're just in different places of it. Anytime there's changes in there's an overlay of another time, and this actually relates to my hat here, but I'm going to get to that. So this is what we tend to overlook. Sorry. Um, then there are two moves that are strictly epistemological. One of which says the question is beyond us. This is called Mysterianism, and the other is kind of all of the above. That is, everything's trying, but everything's not trying. This is the equivocating or poetic naturalist move that I don't buy. And then there's what we're trying to do, which is to say, no, I don't get to assume that there's no emergence. And I don't get to say that emergence is something added. The intuition is that life or motivation or information is this stuff from another realm. So, for example, when we talk about DNA as an information-bearing molecule, well, it is in us, but otherwise it's actually a lot like snot. It's not not living snot, but it's just like it's goo. It's not. It doesn't have information in it as some extra substance. I have to explain how information emerges as a new kind of work at the origins of life, and then I have to explain how it comes all the way out to who we are. And the key to doing that is emergent constraint. So I will use traffic congestion as an example. So you're driving down a road, you're taking the path of least resistance according to the law of least action in physics, or I would say law of least effort in life. Where, I'm trying to get to where I'm trying to go, and I want the path of least resistance. Okay. So I come on some traffic congestion. Well, what is traffic congestion? Is it a new thing? Is it a new solid in the world that's been introduced into it? No, actually, it's constraints it's tighter constraints because of the locations of matter, these cars. And this would be true of turbulence as well. Traffic congestion is people trying to get someplace, but turbulence in water is not trying to get any place. It's just falling towards the path of least resistance, down the path of least resistance. What happens when you get congestion is it limits likely action. It actually unlikelies possibilities and therefore makes other possibilities more likely. This is the heart of our work. And I have talked to biostatisticians, statisticians. Do you have a word for what doesn't happen or what's unlikely to happen? They don't. I had to coin the term unlikelying. Water turbulence unlikelies some paths. And so water tends to flow around it, taking a path of least resistance. Same is true in traffic congestion. So if you keep that metaphor in mind, you get to see that there are changes in what happens that are a result of unlikelying. Possible pathways become unlikely, making other pathways more likely. And then we've got what trying beings do, which is we unlikelify. So if you think about the meaning of ify, like rational, what is it? Justify, or rationalize, or moralize. Um, all of those terms imply a certain kind of agency that you're doing the work of making it happen. It also implies some self-dealing. Moralizing, from my perspective, is pretending or just assuming that the universe is on your side in some fight. So unlikelifying is what life does. I think I am at core unlikelifying things, unlikelifying possibilities. I'm unlikelifying my own death, which I would say is the most fundamental tendency in the universe. So talk about changing, everything falls apart, and I'm here hustling to keep myself together. That's work that needs to be explained, and it's a new kind of work that you don't get out of water flowing down through congestion or otherwise. You get an interesting interim, something in between water taking the path of least resistance towards disorder, which is the second law of thermodynamics, just moving towards equilibrium. You get what's called a far from equilibrium system, like a whirlpool. So water's flowing, there's turbulence, it tends to fall into paths of least resistance. The path of least resistance is basically a roundabout, like what you get on a road when you've got the turbulence of cars entering an intersection from all directions. The most efficient path, and it will tend to fall towards the most efficient path if it's water, but we end up creating roundabouts to deal with it, is a spiral flow. You got to flow in one direction, or else the spiral doesn't work that way, or else you create macro turbulence. So to ground this a little bit, yeah, I've got my to-do list because I'm a guy with language. But really, my to-do list is a product of my self-control, my self-discipline, keeping myself away from my to-don't list. I get around to what I do by preventing myself from dithering. And I would say that is true all the way down to the origins of life, that life is a kind of congestion that channels energy into work that regenerates the congestion it is. That is not true of a whirlpool. A whirlpool is completely at the mercy of its far from equilibrium uh, uh, context. As water's flowing through, that's what sustains it. The whirlpool is doing nothing to maintain itself, and therefore it's actually self-undermining. If you think about a whirlpool or in a bathtub, it eliminates the far from equilibrium system faster than turbulence would. So this is a real problem, and it's a real problem in science because many scientists have come to the conclusion that life is just self-organization. So this is it's a variation on the story, which is to say, look, in the universe, mostly what we find is things falling towards disorder or equilibrium, and then you get this whirlpool that is strangely organized. It's not a likely outcome that you have a spiral that seems surprising to us. And since we're organized, we must be self-organization. In a way, that became the insight overreach of the last 20 years in biophilosophy. Is this idea that you're just nothing but self-organization. And Dan Brown, the guy who wrote the Da Vinci Code, wrote a fascinatingly clueless book about this. What was it called? I forget. But he's got a whole mystery where an Elon Musk-like character goes out and discovers what life is, and he comes to the conclusions of this guy who was the flavor of the month at the time he wrote the book, a guy named Jeremy England, who was arguing that life is nothing but self-organization. Well, self-organization is crucial to understanding how we go from, this is what the stacked hats are about, the constraints, the physical constraints, to this new kind of work that you see in life, that you see in emotions, that you see in language, all the way up to us. Okay, strange loops properly stacked. Amen. And actually, so strange loops, we've been calling that for the longest time. We do not like the term because it's epistemological. It doesn't actually describe what's going on. what it is. So we've been looking for a new term, and one of my buddies, who's part of this research, a little peripheral to it, but he's a chemist and was a vice president at Eli Lilly, who was in charge of drug discovery. He was one of 4 people who got to choose which molecules they were going to invest in next. He was a portfolio manager. He coined the term Mobius loops, and that's what we think they are. It's also metaphoric, but it actually gets to something that is crucial to understanding how constraints compound, how you could end up with constraints upon constraints. So the physical work only happens through constraint. You channel energy into work. Yeah, Mobius loops, right. And that actually ties all the way into my fascination with irony, because irony is also Mobius loops. I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing. No matter how much I chase the truth, it will never catch me. I've wasted my whole life learning things I now already know. All of these have a flipping in them. They're like the liar's paradox. You flip it around on itself. Matthew was asking about my path, and I would say that my dad was an early influence in that he was deeply ironic. Speaking of irony, I was with my grandkids, and they introduced me to this product, which I consider the ultimate in ironic candy. Let's see, you can see this. These are Jelly Bellies, and they have 2 colors they have 2 flavors that are indistinguishable by looks. They look the same, but they have opposite effects. So one, for example, is either banana or wet dog. One is stinky socks. I had this the other night. And the other one that looks exactly like it is Tutti Frutti. One is barf and the other is peach. Stink bug versus toasted marshmallow. I love it. I went out and bought 3. I don't know who I'm going to give them to, but they're great. And they have games they suggest you play with them. And I like this game that they suggested enough that I bought them, which is you sit people in a circle and you each take one, and every one of them's a 50-50 gamble. And the question, the trick is to disguise whether you got a sweet one or a stinky one. And the stinky ones they're fucking convincing. I mean, so you'd have to be able to just grin and bear it in a casual way if you had the one that tastes like dead fish. I had dead fish too. It was a rough night for us. I got 4 in a row that smelled like ass. Anyway, check them out. Irony. What is an ironic situation? It's one where the outcome is the opposite of expectations. Very funny, very terrifying. I mean, this is where dire irony comes in for me. That's what dire irony is about. Irony tends to imply humor. That's half the story. It's scary that we live in a world where it's not deterministic. This morning I posted on YouTube, on Facebook, which is my commonplace book. That's where I put all my ideas. If anybody's interested in them other than me, because I find them interesting, that's where to go. And I wrote that corporations and AI are not people, but if they were, they'd be psychopaths. And more often than not, we envy them, their conscience-free freedom. And that's what I think is going on with this is what I call robo-envy. That is, there's a part of us that wishes we were deterministic. It's been there since the beginning of belief in God. The idea that we are simply at their mercy. We are merely puppets. Okay. When I remember defeatism and nihilism, it seems, well, okay, Matthew, this is useful. Nebulous void, that's right. I mean, your name is perfect for it. You're not a person, you're a corporation. I'm changing my name to Chrysler, was a Woody Guthrie song. I'm going down to Washington, D.C. I'll tell those power brokers what they did for Iacocca is perfectly acceptable for me. That's what I'm talking about, is that there's a way in which we kind of like that. uh, to be not even a bus but a tram. That would be fun because then I wouldn't have any guilt or doubt. So you call it defeatism. It's also all positive psychology was built on this idea. A guy named Martin Seligman learned helplessness. So the way I think about it is that um, doubt is extremely painful. It can be extremely painful. Not always when you're doing crossword puzzle or Wordle or something like that. It's not painful. It's delightful at a distance, a safe distance. It's fun to watch people in turmoil on TV because you're not. Um, but if you're deciding whether or not to give your child one cancer treatment or another, you don't want to be bamboozled. And if you get enough doubt, so what doubt I think is doing is disrupting my flow, my habits, my uh, my my sense that I'm in a groove. And if you get enough doubt, then you end up with self-doubt, which would be defeatism. That's the sense that you don't have what it takes to deal with the doubts you're dealt. And that's really painful. And if you've been following my work, you would know that I'm paying a lot of attention to what I call mojonomics, which is the supply of and demand for carpentry. So for confidence. Sorry, I don't know why I've got that word. So supply and demand for confidence, self-confidence. It's huge. Oh, I did it again. I'm still talking, but I will regenerate my animation. Because and I will have this fixed by next time. Sorry about this, you guys. Um, uh, let's see. All right, it's coming back up in a second. Doubt management and also expectation management is what it comes to. So, just to give you an example, I find useful the mantra, I just have to be sad for a minute. It's often longer than a minute. I've got a friend who I lost about a year and a half ago. I still miss him. Um, but in part because he he threatened my self-confidence on the way out the door. It felt like a sucker punch to me, but he declared me bad news. God, it did it again. Um, yeah, so he declared me bad news on the way out the door, and so because I am someone who is trying to be doubt tolerant, I have to take seriously his attacks on me. Not too seriously because they were melodramatic, but they still do eat at me. If you don't want to be an asshole, expect some anxiety, and I do. So I've been carrying that. There are people who walk away from me, and I say I wish them well elsewhere. I did a video this week on it. Uh, a positive treatment of the term "dead to me." Dead to me is normally spit out in anger and disgust, but there's another version of it that interests me because I'm interested in speed grieving. That is being sad for as few minutes as I have to, as I lower expectations, as I adjust, as I calibrate towards serenity to accept what I cannot change. So I don't mean he should be dead. I'm just saying I've got to wish him well elsewhere, or I've got to act as though he doesn't exist. I'm not quite there. I think he blocked all of my mail. He said that I am leaving a wake of carnage among friends and family. It was a really strong attempt at an intervention with me because I'm mouthy. Um, I'm ironic. I'm mouthy, but a lot of what goes into my mouthiness is that I have to be very self-effacing. I do not get on my high horse, but I find it that if I can demonstrate that I'm okay with my warts and all, it's amazing how much freedom that gives me to be mouthy with other people. If I and I it can't be lip service. I can't say, well, I'm never said I was perfect, but you're an asshole. No, it can't be that. I have to really be okay with what the actual fuck I am. And that relates to this thing about being sad for a minute. So I have to be sad for a minute because Terry's leaving. I have to lower my expectations. I have an assumption that he's always here and now he's not. And what am I going to do about that? I'll make various adjustments, but at some point I'll get over it. And what I've lost will be, in effect, dead to me. I won't be struggling to bring it back the same way. Um, If you find your glass half empty, you can do a few things with it. One is you can try to fill it with what was in it before. You can try to fill it with something else, or you can get a shorter glass. So lowering one's expectation management, having to be sad for a minute. Um, I do see limits on it. I was talking to my 87-year-old philosopher friend about this because we talk a lot about what it's like to grow old. He has been a role model for growing old. Um, uh, I tease him that I've always wanted to be him when I grow up, and I don't want to be him because it doesn't look fun. But he's also really good at accepting it and not raging endlessly against the dying of the light. And as a sidebar, I think that's a lot of what MAGA is. MAGA is basically make aging go away. I see it as for the middle-aged people who go into it, it's just cephalophobia, fear of decay. It's a red sports car. That's how it appears to me. And when you look at Donald Trump and how nostalgic the movement is for dancing to Kid Rock and Vanilla Ice, and it's so embarrassing. But not if you're passionate. If you're passionate, you don't get to see how embarrassing you are. But it is surprising that way. Okay, let me take a look at the comments to see where we are here. In what way are you bad news? Yeah, most people. I am not actually leaving a wake of carnage among my friends and neighbors. I am among some, but I am bad news because I am explaining a joke. That is, I am trying to understand what I am, and this relates very much to autophobia. Um, I say things that you're not supposed to say. I'm mouthy that way. I'll give you an example of something I posted on Facebook this morning that is it's okay. The moment of romantic partner orgasm is the quintessential irony. Visceral passions convincing us of future compatibility based on a sign that has little or nothing to do with it. Okay? So just think about what that is. Imagine you're in a marriage and you're trying to keep the romantic vibe going, and you're stuck dealing with this bind, which is what I love about us as a couple, is that we can talk about anything provided we don't. And then this fucker comes on, Jeremy Sherman, and he writes this thing. I always get some response from people who are saying, "How dare you?" or "No marriage is good." I get the same when I make pokes at religion. The ironic path is not it's not the path most people are on. And I coined the term touchy 2020s about this guy who dropped me a year and a half ago, because I realize it's not just the Trumpists. We are all extremely touchy right now. What do we do in crisis? What do we do when we're flooded with doubt? Because we thought we were on a groove through most of the last few decades, at least to some extent, relatively speaking. We had a sense that things were going to get better and better. And now we're dealing with a more complicated cluster flux, and including all of this new technology that makes my face freeze. I'm sorry about this. I will get it all fixed, and in the meantime, reviving my vital signs. Yeah, I just have to reboot myself. I'm a robot. That's what's going on here. Just a second. I'm almost back. Okay, so, well, no. Okay, so Nebulous Void, first of all, you don't exist as anything but a corporation. It's really nice to meet you, my soul brother or sister. Frank and forthright ain't mouthy. It's honesty. This is another place where I fuss. So I'll just mention it here because I think it relates to the Trump train and how they can rationalize anything. There's this apple and orange thing that humans do, and we do it through language, which I think of as load-bearing, loosely defined last words. So if I said, yeah, I'm not being stubborn, I'm being principled, what am I doing there? They're completely different. The stubborn is different from steadfast. Okay, what am I doing there? Well, one of them is loaded positive and the other is loaded negative. Okay, So if someone accuses you of being steadfast, that feels almost like a compliment. But if someone accuses you of being pig-headed or stubborn, that's definitely a criticism. So what are these? Well, they're loaded words because one is spun positive. It is spoken in positivese, the language of positive. One is spoken in negative or negativese. And then there's the question what neutralese would be. Are they the same in every respect except for how they're spun? One spun positive, one spun negative. So you take a look. So this is all I see the Trumpists doing all day long. It's how they rationalize everything. It's the pan-bomb-de move, and any idiot can do it. And all you need is unlimited self-confidence. And not only that, once you start doing this, it feeds your self-confidence. You become a dumbass. But what you're doing is you're saying, when I do it, I use the positive term about it. When you do it, I use the negative term about it. And I don't ever have to think about what the word actually means. So, for example, I think that Trumpism is hands down the wokest, brokest joke of a movement this country has ever seen. Not by the liberal definition that they want to impose, but if you're talking about acting like you've seen the light and solved reality and taken the fucking red pill, no, it's hands down the wokest movement. But that's not how they use it. They say woke is what the liberals do, what my enemies do. Woke is always bad. And what I do is principled, while what they do is stubborn, pig-headed, dumb, all of that. So and to do that, they have to not look at what the word means. And then you go online, and there's a wonderful YouTube video of an interview with a right-wing woman who had just written a book on woke. And the interviewer asked, "What's woke?" And she freezes up like I do on the screen. She just doesn't know. It's really worth seeing if you can, because no, they're not paying attention to what the words mean. God forbid. God forbid. Christian sounds hella good. So they're Christian. Okay. What does Christian mean? I wouldn't want to know, because they wouldn't want to know, because if they knew, maybe they wouldn't be. But it's a last word. I think of Christian or MAGA as, yeah, no, I don't. So I don't think so. Nebulous void. And I am willing to be this kind of pushy here because two reasons. One is because it'll demonstrate why people would decide that I'm leaving a wake of carnage among friends and family. And also because you're a nebulous void in a corporation, so I don't have to worry about hurting your feelings. Think about it a minute. What does woke mean? Okay, there's a locally branded version of woke. I'm perfectly fine with the black roots of the term and all of that. But that's a local application of the term. And when you think about it, it means revelation. For 2,000 years plus, revelation was the only way that people claimed they had the authority to speak about what's right, righteous, and mighty. So it's there from the beginning of language. That's what's the meaning. Yeah. And then the racists reapportion it. What the Trumpists do is anything that sounds good about their enemy, they figure out a way to just repeat over and over that it's bad. So I actually think we're playing into their hands when we say, no, it's good. No, it means aware. By the way, something about awareness. I've asked all sorts of mindfulness fans what mindfulness is, and I have never gotten a straight answer. It's exactly the same as woke from my perspective. I quit dating for a year back when I was a dating kind of guy because I couldn't find a woman who didn't accuse me of being not mindful when she disagreed with me. What does it mean? It means being aware. Aware. What do we mean by aware? So for me, having roots in an explanation for how you ever get selves that are trying, selves that are making functional interpretive effort. Interpretation is awareness. I cannot be aware of everything. I'm not aware of the background radiation, let alone the feeling in my toes right now. There's all sorts of things I'm not aware of. You ask a mindfulness person or a woke person what it means to be aware, and you mean aware of everything or aware of the right things? This is a standard question, and I want to tease it out. I mean, you find a channel where they talk about wokeness and are all proud about it and doing what I consider to be uh, comparable to what the Trumpists do. It's a form of scornography. Those unwoke people are losers or bad or evil or whatever, and I'm great because of the contrast between them and me, that kind of thing. I'm not doing that here. So what do we mean by awareness? So I have a question I ask Christians that parallels the questions that I ask mindfulness people. Um, uh, and it's got to do with awareness and love. So awareness, with a mindfulness person, are you aware of everything or are you aware of the right things? When you're in a mindful state, which is it? And I've never gotten a straight answer. Um, uh, should you be mindful all the time, or is it an exercise you do the way that I play music or something, something that you do, or the way I brush my teeth? I had a fascinating conversation with a PhD psychologist. This was the last one before I quit for a year. So she was a PhD psychologist, licensed psychologist, who promoted mindfulness, and we would sit together and talk, and I couldn't get a straight answer from her about it. And finally she said, well, it's like brushing your teeth. You're not supposed to be mindful all the time. And then 1 minute later, she's back to saying you should be mindful all the time. I said, but you shouldn't be brushing your teeth all the time. And she said, you don't know that. That was our last date. I was done. I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it. She was cute. She got married shortly after. Um, uh, anyway, the question to Jesus people is, does he love and accommodate everybody, or does he love and accommodate the right, not the wrong people? So woke means aware. I want to just suggest that this is the problem with all of my work. I am a self trying to explain selves. I'm a trying being who's trying to explain trying. I am an interpreted being trying to interpret what interpretation is, because I don't think everything's interpreting. I don't think my table is interpreting when I hit it. It responds physically, but it's not interpreting. It's not trying to do anything. And I'm also trying to come up with the best explanation for normativity, or good versus bad, which I think starts with life. It doesn't start with the universe. Good and bad is always with respect to a self trying to do something. So one way to describe what I'm doing is I've got to explain from nothing but physical chemistry at a classical level, basic physics and chemistry, how you get selves that are making functional interpretive effort. So effort is work, but there's actually something about each of those terms that actually ties into work. I have to explain from physical work, like rocks falling down the hill and bumping into things, how you get work that works to keep a chemical system working in its workspace. So work that works is effort that functions, that's good for. Keeping a chemical system working, I'm a chemical system and I keep myself working in my workspace. That's interpretation. I have a self-other relationship. This is why I don't believe free will is a well-framed question. It's interpretive will, I have to explain. I'm not the least bit interested in whether I could do something spontaneous without a physical cause. That's not interesting to me. I've got agency. I've got skin in the game. I'm trying to do things, whereas a rock falling down the hill is not trying to do something. So I've got to be able to explain work that works to keep a chemical system working in its workspace. And the solution for that is largely around this concept of constraint. I am an emergent constraint that channels energy into work that maintains the emergent constraint I am. And this is also one of the side products of this. Another reason why I'm insufferable to some people is, or at least buzzkill, is having an explanation for what I am, having a hunch, a strong hunch that is based on no abstract worded stuff. I have an explanation for what happens when I die. The emergent constraint is gone. Just like when traffic clears, only different, because traffic is not trying to do anything. The traffic congestion not trying to do something. I'm trying to do something. Traffic congestion is an example of self-organization, or how you get to self-organization. But I'm more than that, or I'm less than that, is what I'm saying. Is that I have further constraints. I have further constraints that constrain the work I am. Now, to explain what I am, there's another problem, which is that I'm using words. I've been reading a lot of intellectual history lately, philosophers debating on these questions. So I've been reading a lot of history in pragmatist philosophy lately. Basically, the history of what happened when Charles Sanders Peirce came up with these ideas, where he's paying attention to the fact that you never get to see the world without your biases. You come into it with your biases. And immediately, everybody, John Dewey, William James, everybody follows from him, Richard Rorty, they're off into this game where they're trying to figure out, okay, but is there absolute truth someplace, and how would you get it? What's the optimal way to figure it out? It's a move away from where Peirce started, so much so that he renamed pragmaticism, to come up with a name so ugly that no one would want to steal it from him. And then he kind of faded a little bit, and then these people are off in it, and never do they once notice that there's life before language. They're operating as if the world starts with words. It does not. Words are late. The math is not the territory. The words we spin about it. So that's where you get this kind of smuggled in dualism that I have to resist if I'm going to do this work successfully, where we simply come up with words combinations that are satisfying. So to say to be woke is to be aware, and it's fine as a first pass, but I do suggest getting beyond that. So, for example, take that word awareness and do what we call it, make an operational definition of it. And the way I frame this up is, okay, you got this term aware. Let me start with the word woke. So there's apparently this phenomenon in the world, you're going to call it woke. It's a category of phenomena. Now I got to hire someone, and they're a stranger. I got them off of Craigslist, to go through a bunch of examples or instances and decide which ones are examples of woke versus not woke. So I have to give them instructions on doing that, and that's not going to be easy. So they say, okay, well, how do I distinguish between woke and unwoke? And I don't get to say, well, the way I do it, or I don't get to use an example like Martin Luther King is woke, but Trump is not. Examples they are not definitions. So I've got to come up with criteria that are reliably true to what I'm trying to get across. So that's one way to escape the loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words that give us such a self-congratulatory feel that I think end up muddying the works, and muddy the works even in high-level philosophy. The words that they're employing throw them off in big ways. An example of it is that there's information theory or semiotics. These are both topics of research, very poorly named. Information isn't out in the world, and there aren't signs out in the world. What we're talking about is how you get some being that is trying to do something that would interpret whatever as a sign. Everything is a potential sign. Everything is potential information. It only becomes information when it's about something for someone trying to do something. It could be the simplest first organism anywhere in the universe. But that's how I would define it, and that's why I'm a pain in the ass. So much so that one of the pain in the ass things I sometimes say is, oh, my bad. I was listening too closely to what you were saying. I'll try to be more inattentive from now on. That's a dig. That's a sucker punch. But it's also true. I have to remember that language isn't used in this fussy way that I have spent my entire last 30 years trying to cultivate. I'm coming back up again. This is like the defibrillators, or defibrillators. I always forget. There, I'm gonna come back up in just a second, and I swear, this will be over in 25 minutes here, and then I'll have this all repaired by the time we come back. Okay, I'm gonna go through some comments because, geez, have I been talking? Let's see. He limited his carnage to you. Yeah, he had no. So, Jeff, you've got this comment here. That's what happens, and that does tie it into the Trump train. It's a hell no move. Oh, hell no. From now on, the problem is anybody but me. Um, Sometimes I refer to it mostly among my Jewish conservative friends as post-traumatic ass syndrome. You're suddenly going to become a Trump train. When you think about how many movies have this vibe about them, where you get someone who's been wronged and they spend the rest of it's revenge porn, it's scornography. Okay, so that was the problem I had, and I don't think I handled it right because I sure probably overlooked how on his high horse he got. He was trying to stage an intervention. He said, "This is all about you and only you. Um, there's nobody else to look at here. If the problem is you, and nothing I said seemed to make any difference, because he had gotten in this place that any of us can get into, and the Trumpists are in all the time. If you are expressing passion, whether it's a tantrum or a tunnel vision monologue reverie about the beauty of the world, you lose sight of the self-other relationship. You lose sight. You don't have to see who you're talking to, and you don't have to see yourself. And that's not an advantage for sales, but it isn't. Well, it can be an advantage for sales, but it's a huge advantage because we don't like to see ourselves, warts and all. But if I'm outraged at you, I'm likely to assume that there's no fleas on me, that my shit don't stink. That's some of the satisfaction of rage or scornography. And that's true no matter what you believe. It's not about belief. It's about that kind of conviction, as if what you care about in the moment is so important that it trumps all other considerations. So yes, in that sense, in that moment, he did, and he. So this was an important friend to me because I love the guy and still love him, um, and because we were incredible musicians together. And I've been without good musical partners, in part because he left, but in part because he cast aspersions about me elsewhere. And now there's a bunch of my old musical friends who won't talk to me. They also probably figured out that I was difficult on their own right because I had what I jokingly called bandstand Tourette's. When I was leading a band on a gig and playing bass and singing, and the drummer was slowing down, I wasn't always tactful. I'm not that coordinated a guy. And I would say, "We're slowing down." And that felt abrasive to them. So no, I'm difficult that way. Also, there's an ambiguity in that world, in the musical world, that I think reflects an ambiguity in everyday life. Um, i i you need your confidence in order to play music live, for example. Even in a jam session, even in a rehearsal. So, are you allowed to voice an opinion about something that someone else is doing? Well, if you're in a band like Fleetwood Mac's, you better, or someone's maybe the leader of the band, or maybe everybody gets to tell each other their suggestions. They're only suggestions. So, one of the things I was leaving out when I said we're slowing down is I could be wrong. I'm half deaf. You're entitled to your opinion about it. My guess is that we're slowing down. I'm not going to say all that in the space between words I'm singing, while playing bass. I'm just not that coordinated. So probably several people also said, "Yeah, I know what it's like. Jeremy's tough work." Okay, between us, for me, the dying of the light must be raged against necessarily. Everything that feels good about protecting people is just an extension of that. Let's talk about that a second. So, what you'll get with me, and what we mostly do on here when I don't come in with a barrel full of concept I'm trying to get across, is you run an idea by me. I could be wrong. I'm half deaf, but here's my how I would unpack that. So, to me, there is in that a little bit of what I call self-reverence. It's self-referential self-reverence. Um, I engage in it. I'm engaging in some of it right now. I'm getting into a tunnel vision monologue reverie about how I see the world. So it's not like you do that therefore I don't. Um, Rage Against the Dying of the Light is from a Dylan Thomas poem. And he's talking about raging against the dying of his light as a person, as an individual. Now, I agree with you that the meaning of life is to not end it. There's a minimal meaning of life is to not end it. If you mean raging against the dying of the light at that level, and I'd even go further, though someone would accuse me of chauvinism, human chauvinism. I think it's important that we not end human life because it's rare and it's the only kind of life that can conceive through language the whole ball of wax and us in it. And I also am someone who believes in keeping democracy alive, even though it's a very difficult system to keep alive. It's a very fragile system. It tends to vote in autocracy eventually or plutocracy. But protecting people, everything that feels good is about protecting people. I totally disagree with that. So take it for what it's worth. Like, I'm half deaf, okay? I'm a fallibilist. No matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet. So I could be full of shit here. I could be barking up the wrong tree with everything I'm saying, okay? But no. Here's why. So we got some other load-bearing, loosely defined last words. They're extremely popular. They sound hella good. These are all positive. Love, compassion, charity, empathy, sympathy, kindness, the golden rule. So if I were to do an operational definition of them, and I think they're all a cluster. They're different ways of talking about the same thing. They all mean accommodation. What does that mean? I actually have to lower my expectations to make room for someone else. They're the serenity side of the serenity prayer, which is I have to be sad for a minute because I wanted something from you that I can't get from you, or I bet I can't get it from you. So I have to adjust my expectations. I actually have to have the courage to adjust my expectations so that I can have the serenity to accommodate you. Accommodating other people isn't fun. And I think we have to be honest about this if we're going to do a better job of it. I am working vigorously against the sentiment that says that everything that feels good is good. Everything that feels good is about protecting people. I think that is one of the main reasons we have the Trump movement right now. So I'll just walk you through it, play with it, sleep on it, decide I'm full of shit, totally fine. Think about the Christian movement at its origins. So you got this guy who says it feels good to accommodate everyone. That's the joy of life, is to accommodate everyone. And then you get this mad rush into it to where we now have 2.4 billion Christians who are distinguished into 46,000 different Christian sects. Did they rush towards it because nothing feels as good as self-sacrifice? Maybe some. I know what it's like to fall into something like that, to surge into something like that. I have a pretty visceral experience of it. At age 20, having inherited, by that time, probably close to $1 million, at a time when $1 million meant something, more than it does now, I signed a vow of poverty and joined the world's largest hippie commune, which was all about everything that feels good is about protecting people. We were truly communal. I'm one of the few people you've probably ever met who's ever actually lived in communism, not Soviet communism, which wasn't communism, it was dictatorship. From the get-go, it was never communism. But ours was really lived daily for 7 years for me. I was an elected elder of the commune by the end, as from each according to their ability to each according to their need. And it was full of joy for me, full of joy like the self-sacrifice of becoming a Christian. But in retrospect, this is another reason why people might not like me. Find me difficult company. I think that was mostly the freedom from doubt. It was a sense that I had found something that would carry me along, that I had found an express train to virtue, that I didn't have to doubt myself anymore. And this is really important to me these days because I don't think we'll ever get rid of Trumps. There will always be con men who would like to brainwash you, whether financially, whatever. That will be a possibility. The idea that crime doesn't pay is as absurd to me as that everything that feels good is about protecting people. Crime pays really well if you can get away with it. So there will always be those kind of criminals. But the question is, how do we fall in with them? How did I fall into the commune? The commune wasn't exactly cultish, but I was decidedly cultish about it. I fell in because it was a heart purging. It was at a time in my life when I was flooded with doubt, and when I joined, the doubt went away. That felt good, but what was it based on? Well, to some extent, it was based on virtue signaling. To a large extent, it was based on virtue signaling. What you get for being Christian or MAGA or mindful or joining my commune is you get freedom from doubt because you have a master excuse for what you're doing. Now, I was highly conscientious there. I signed that vow of poverty. I worked in Guatemala for 2.5 years putting water into very poor villages. I mean, incredibly poor villages. It felt glorious to me, but mostly for how I felt about me. I don't think that sacrifice feels that good, and this helps me explain why the Trumpists are lip service Christians. You're going to strip away the the costly work of anything. You're going to put on a cross. You'll wear a cross, and you'll feel good about yourself. That's the self-reverence that I am watching out for and find unappealing, no matter who's doing it, whether it be my leftist friends or my right-wing friends. It's the loaded, load-bearing language, loaded in your direction, in one's direction, as an alternative to looking at what the actual fuck we all are. So, so that's just a little bit about that. Ain't frank and forthright, ain't mouthy. It's honesty. Okay, yeah. So we dealt with that one a bit. That's an interesting difference between us. For me, the dying of the light must be raised. Yeah. Okay. So I think that it stunts growth. This loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words, where I can become a champion for virtue out in the world, and I'm talking about the formula that works. You use this term here. Everything that feels good is about protecting people. I also would say that might be that's spoken in what I'll call the aspirational tense. The aspirational tense is where if I said I just threw out a pack of cigarettes and I told you that I just quit smoking, or that I quit smoking. I haven't exactly quit. I mean, I had a cigarette 10 minutes ago. It's my intention. I aspire to quit smoking, and it can motivate it. But I don't think that's actually how it works. That's wishful thinking. To say that everything feels good is about protecting people. It's in the same neighborhood as if I were in charge of the world and how everybody feels, I would make it so it feels good for everyone to protect everybody else. I don't know if you've been around for this, but I don't think the golden rule works. I mean, it basically is the golden paradox. If everybody accommodated everyone, then no one would have to accommodate anyone. I pay more attention to the golden rule than I think most people do. I'm really fussy about it, and I apply it in my everyday life. I am a hyper conscientious brute. That's my sense of who I am. You're entitled to believe to decide whatever you feel about me or interpret about me, but that's my guess at what I am. I really don't like it that my screen has been cutting out. I don't like showing up late. I make a point of showing up on time. And at the same time, I'm mouthy as hell. So, but I'm mouthy about how with language we get slippery, and that the highest priority we need to admit to the highest priority, which is confidence. And that's once again why I go back to the supply of and demand for confidence. Self-confidence really feels good. The lack of it feels really bad. And so, yeah, you can get some self-confidence out of helping others. You can also get self-confidence out of lip service for helping others. And that's where I'm going. That's my problem here with these comments is, yeah, sounds good on paper, but I want to understand what the actual fuck I am. And I want us to try to admit to it with each other, because I do not see our virtue signaling ever outpacing the Trumpists. In a way, what I think they did is they took the virtue signaling that we were doing on the left, and they simply said, well, you can strip it of all consequences or action. You don't have to actually be good at anything at all. You can just say, whatever's good, I've got it to infinity. Whatever's bad, my enemies have to infinity. It's automatic. It's hero-botic. It's robotically playing hero no matter what. I don't think we can outpace them at that. And I think that all of that loaded language stunts growth. So that's what you get with me. And that's why I leave a trail of what was it? A trail of carnage. Let's see, helps to have a client media sane washing insane implications. Yes, and what I am suggesting here is that the compliant medium is internal. Yeah, I could say, well, if I were in charge of the world, there would be media that wouldn't do that. Why does the media do that? Because it pays. Why does it pay? Because we are all sane washing ourselves. We are insane washing ourselves insanely through platitudes and virtue signaling. So I encourage you to do a couple things when you see memes or any kind of bold statements about where virtue lies. One is rebrand it to your opponents. For example, the other day I wrote that Trump is the quintessential be here now president. He's totally in the moment. Okay, I don't think be here now is a necessarily good thing. And I was friends with Ram Dass, who coined the term, and he was very proud of it too. But I don't actually think it is the answer. I think it's the answer if you're terrified by your past and future, like I was at one point. There was a time when I was so in the dark place of midlife crisis, my first one, so I was a virgin. And no, that was the only time I wanted the anti-intellectual mindlessness of mindfulness, because I couldn't afford to think about my past or my future. I do see some advantage to living in the moment. Sometimes, I'm interested in the aperture of my attention or awareness, where to focus in, where to go broad, where to think long-term, where to think short-term. All of that fascinates me, but it's not like always do one or the other. That's absurd. And so is the absurdness where you don't even get around to explaining what you mean by awareness. That always reminds me of you're out golfing. I've never golfed and wouldn't want to, but imagine that you've got a golf trainer who's right there, and you say, okay, well, how should I deal with this shot? And they says, use a club. Yeah, that's not what I was asking. Which club? So if you want to get to the cluster flux that interests me, which includes the clusterfuck that interests me, one thing to do is when you hear a platitude, and rebrand it to your opponents and see if it holds. It almost always does. I do not think the left is any more hopeful than the right. We just hope for different things. But I don't get to claim that I am more hopeful than them. I do not think that I am less spirited than spiritual people. They don't get to claim it. I don't get to claim that I'm more woke. I don't even know if I want to be woke. I want to be woke to the right things. I would like everybody to wake up to the fact that you're going to be drowsy again in 15 minutes. The idea that you wake up once and for all, that's the I once was lost, but now I'm blind bullshit that I am finding a real problem, a real growth stunter in us these days. I want to tease out these questions. Another way to deal with it is when you get a platitude, like everything that feels good is about protecting people, look for an exception. Orgasms and whipped cream, not necessarily together, though they could go together. I mean, it's possible. Whatever floats your boat, whatever banana floats your boat, or whatever root beer floats your boat. Those feel good. Are they about protecting other people? How about this problem? Would you say the universe starts out with fairness in mind? Is it trying to make things fair? It's falling towards equilibrium, but that's not the same as fairness. How then do we deal with fairness? Well, Charles Sanders Peirce points out that it takes an awful lot of work to make a fair roulette wheel. It takes an awful lot of work to create fairness between me and someone else. That's why I do it locally. I have a fair osphere. I want to be fair to the people who are directly in my life. I'm paying far less attention to fairness to people far, far away. And if I pay perhaps more attention than most, I mean, a lot of people think, fuck it, all these Iranians who are dying, they're not people, they're Iranians, So there's that. But I also want to acknowledge that there really is a problem. If you think the world should be fair and equal, you are burdening yourself with a lot of work that you won't end up doing. And what you'll end up doing is indulging in a degree of hypocritical lip service. This is my problem with it. I mean, I put out a video a couple of days ago about this. The advantages of having unattainable ideals. You don't have to worry about attaining them. You're never you can't, you won't, and you shouldn't turn the other cheek for everyone. Like the rule in the universe is give an inch to everyone and they'll always give an inch back. Fuck that. That doesn't work. If you do that, I mean, you'll give an inch to a psychopath, and yeah, maybe you'll be proud of yourself for having done that, but you'll actually have made the world a worse place by accommodating them, by keeping the peace and fairness with them at that level. So when you have an unattainable ideal, the kind of thing we do with our virtue signaling, you actually have to worry about meeting that goal. It's unattainable. You can say, well, I'm getting there. I never said I was perfect, but I'm on an express train to virtue. That's my problem with it. And that's why I think that we are drawn to not the sacrifice, but the humble brag that we get to claim with it. At least I'm not saying this is true of everybody. I know a few people who are what I'd call true believers. I think they're wrong. I think they're dangerous, but I do think they're earnest. I don't think that's most of what you get in Christianity these days, or in any religion or any ideology, including the liberal version of things. So I'm culturally a liberal, but I am a libertarian socialist. I'm a conservative progressive. Um, I'm thinking about these tensions, and this brings me full circle back to the backseat drivers. So remember, if you were here this long, and you probably weren't, but early on I gave you this metaphor of, I think of life as like driving a crowded, winding road in the dark, where and you got to watch out for perils on opposite sides. So another way I would go at a meme or a virtue signaling meme is I have this rule. It's not a rule, which is every truism is half true. And if you want to get at the other half, ask yourself, why, if it's so damn true, do people have to keep on saying it? In terms of oxygenating our bodies, we have to do that all the time in order to stay alive. There are times when you shouldn't breathe, like if your house is burning down. But we don't go around telling people, you should breathe, because that's obvious. Why then do we say things like everything that feels good is about protecting people? Because it's not true. Because it's half true. So I think in stereo. I think in opposite pairs. I'm watching out for perils on opposite sides. Aristotle was about this too. The middle way that he talks about in the Nicomachean Ethics is not about the tram ride down the center line. It's about watching out for perils on either side. And he's talking about exactly this one. There's perils if you are too selfless or not selfless enough. So I guess I'll close out with this, and I didn't get to everything. Let me see if there's anything else I should say here. Let's see. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. Oh, so here's where I'll go with this. If there's anything I didn't get to here, uh, uh, um, this is where I'll be tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Come, just join. Just join in, and we'll pick up a topic. We had a fabulous topic last time about what happens to people when they leave cults. This was Rob's question. Wonderful question. I like where we took it. We'll meet at 11 o'clock. We meet for an hour and a half there, and I don't talk the whole time because you get to talk and all of that. Okay. But in the meantime, let's see, where was I going to go? Oh, the thing about Yeah, looking at opposite extremes and trying to avoid both in the narrowing, not arrowing of life. And the backseat drivers who are saying, "Watch out for don't be too selfless," says one, and the other one says, "Don't be too selfish." And I'm in the middle, and I've got to keep my equanimity. For me, equanimity is not finding that set point in the middle, but being equally slightly anxious about risks on either side. So back to the question of whether I'm leaving a wake of carnage. That was the word wake. Um, uh, um, yeah, my equanimity comes from wondering equally when I am worried equally that I am too assertive or not assertive enough for a situation. That's when I'm in equanimity, not a set point, not the middle notch. The way I think about that one is you don't want the Jews going to Hitler and saying, "Look, you want to kill 6 million of us. We want you to kill zero. So let's settle on 30, on 3 million." That's not how we do it. Um, okay. All right. This was fun. I won't freeze up so much. I have so much stage fright. That's what you were watching. Is that I was freezing up. I just locking up. My mind was on vacation. My mouth was working overtime, but I ended up resetting myself because I'm a robot, or at least I'm a corporation, and that's how I ended up the way I am here. Um, See some of you tomorrow. See maybe all of you. Whatever. We'll have a good time. Thanks for being here. Pleasure to be with you. See you next Saturday. If I don't see you, well, I'll see you when I do. Okay. Rage against the dying of light, and also accept that the light's dying. Okay.